Morning, Ed from Crystal Clear Aquatics. It's like buses, nothing and then all at once, getting the camera out quite a lot over the last week or two. So today, another good fun job. This is kind of a pond revisited, but we're doing a lot of work on it. This is a pond that Dave and I redesigned and enlarged massively 4 years ago now. This is its 5th year. And today we're going to be doing a full drain and a clean on it with the intention of reducing some of the numbers of the fish. There's a mixture of goldfish, some koi, some rudd in here, and really the rudd, they've been overpopulating the pond. The pond is netted, so there's no fish naturally getting reduced by the heron. There's a much bigger wildlife pond down at the bottom of the garden. So when we get this emptied and drained, we won't be replacing the rudd back into here. They'll be going down to the bottom pond. This is a lovely pond. I've got a real soft spot for this one. I love the shape of it. When we were building it, God, it was a lot of work. But the results were lovely. So I'll try and stick up a little bit of footage and some links to the original video and some pictures of how the pond used to look. But once upon a time, this was much smaller. It was surrounded by some old broken up bits of Indian sandstone paving. There used to be an enormous rockery raised up here just behind the Oase with a cascade pouring in. So the pond was completely transformed. Not looking too bad in terms of clarity. Over the last year or two, water clarity has really started to drop, and that's partly why we want to come along and do a clean. There's quite a lot of sediment. I can see the fish is stirring up quite a bit of muck down here now. Quite a bit of sediment that needs to be taken out of the pond, and the best way to do that is to do a full drain and clean now that it's at its 5-year period. But also, another very important aspect of this job is we're going to be replacing the main filtration pump. We're going to be upgrading it to a bigger pump. We've got 2 pumps in the pond at the moment. One of them is delivering water. Oh, look, there's Dave. Hello, Dave. One of them is going to be delivering water to the stream independently, and the other pump does the filtration system, which empties back into the pond over here. And that filtration pump is just a little bit too small. You know, over the years, the fish numbers have increased, the fish have grown, the demands on the pond, the amount of kind of biological activity that's going on in the pond has increased dramatically. And so with that, we need to start to update some of the equipment. So putting a bigger pump on to increase the flow through the filter is going to be important. So this is going to be a bit of a product reveal as well. We're going to be using the brand new Oase aquamax Eco Premium to replace the old Eco Classic pump that's in there. And we'll be going up from a 17,000 pump up to a 21,000 litre pump. Quite excited to see this new pump. There's an awful lot of new features that they've put on here. The design of the pump has changed enormously, the efficiency of the pump has improved, the lifespan and the longevity of the pump has improved, so I'm quite excited to get my hands on this and to see exactly what changes and improvements have been done. So we're just rigging up one of our tanks as the fish holding tank. This is well, my kid's old paddling pool, and I keep saying every time I use it, this is the last time we're going to use it because it's getting old and very brittle. But it keeps going, so we keep using it. It's really nice, isn't it, to come back and see
it is.
Stuff like this. I was just saying to Dave, you know, 5 years ago, it was an awful lot of work when we did this. We dug out about 80 tons of thick clay to enlarge this, and it was all hand dug and all wheelbarrowed by hand up the garden and loaded up into skips, multiple skips. I don't reckon I could do it anymore.
That doesn't make any sense. I've missed one.
So once we get all of this equipment set up, we've got another bowser, another big holding tank, because we want to retain as much of the original pond water as possible. That's really important. You know, all the muck is at the bottom of the pond. That's the dogs just going out for a walk. So all that surface layer of cleaner, clear water, there's an awful lot of beneficial bacteria, it's established, mature water. We don't want to get rid of that. So we're going to hang on to as much of that as possible so we can refill the pond once we've done the clean. It's going to be a bit of a challenge fitting the new pump. So when the pond was installed, as we always do, we included a conduit to get the cables through. So we have got a way of being able to pull out the old cable and feed new ones through. But we're going to have to try and locate a little junction box that's buried in the ground. Now, I did take photos of this years ago and I do have an idea of exactly where it is, but we're going to have to do a little bit of exploratory digging just to relocate that. Plants have really established nicely on this pond over the years. And what's nice is that there's so much variation in colour and flowering times of the plants. So the marigolds here were the first to flower. They're past their best now, but they're still in flower, which is good. And then followed up very, very shortly by the irises. We've got a nice little purple versicolour over here. We've got a cultivar of the yellow pseudochorus, slightly smaller than the native yellow, but still big. This pond can cope with it. And then some more purple irises, they're lovely things. But the irises are over far too quickly. And then following up from there, lots of one of my favourites, the pickerel plants, Pondaterias. They're really, really late establishing plants in the pond, so they're only just starting to leaf up now. And they won't be in flower until middle to the end of summer, and then they'll continue in flowering right through to the end of the season. Got a few weeds in here as well, but they're pretty weeds. They'll be coming out. And the stream is established nicely as well. Bit of cut grass in there from where the grass has been cut recently. Now this is actually really helping to filter the pond naturally. So this stream is now full of really established Potamogetum crispus, or curly leaf pondweed. This is a lovely, lovely underwater plant, an aerating plant. Broadleaf, very important for newts. Again, sticking their leaves to these eggs and folding them up. It's very kind of crispy, hence the name Potamogetum crispus. It looks like seaweed, and it's a little bit more interesting than a lot of aerating plants that you get in ponds. So it's one of my favourites, and it'll grow quite happily in shady conditions in very deep water. Like a lot of oxygenating plants and a lot of pond plants generally, left to their own devices, it can really start to get a little bit too much and quite thuggy, and it will take over. In this condition here, it's only growing in a few inches of water, but it's taken over the whole stream. And this naturally is providing a screen to trap all the little fine particulate matter that's getting pumped up to the top of the stream. So this is acting as a wonderful kind of vegetable filtration system. But not just mechanically, it's not just trapping physically this silt. Very importantly, it's also mopping up free nutrients in the water. So it's using up phosphates and nitrates as a fertiliser to grow, and that in turn is helping to reduce algae problems in the pond. So planting is really, really important in a pond. If you can incorporate plants even in a koi pond, it's always a good idea to do so. Right, that's enough chit chat though. As always, I've left Dave to do all the work, so I better go and help him out. So this is me doing my sales pitch, my part for Oase. This is the new pump which is getting installed into the pond. This is the new Aquamax Eco Premium range of pumps. We're on about generation 5 or 6, thereabouts, trying to think through the history of these pumps. And just going back through the chain of pumps. Originally, when I first started in retail, more than 20 years ago now, the Aquamax was considered, you know, the bee's knees of pond pumps. It was the most reliable pump at the time. It was a real workhorse of a pump. And it was a very, very popular pump. People would hang on to these things for years and years before there were any faults. But things change. The second and third generation of pumps sort of kick in, and some slightly more smart technology and some more features is implemented. And there were a few teething problems with one of the generations of pump, which I think tarnished the reputation of the Aquamax pump a little bit. And a lot of customers who remembered the good old days of the generation 1, I think were a little bit disappointed. But Oase have since sorted out all those sort of issues. We're now to the latest generation of pump, which has got some fantastic components, and they've really beefed up the hardware in here to make the pump a lot more reliable and a lot more efficient. So the pump itself, physically, externally, visually, it looks much the same as the last generation Eco Premium. It's physically about the same size, or if not identical, and you've still got this lovely ergonomically designed shell with 4 very easy clips to remove the strainer for maintenance and toolless entry. Inside, the pump looks a little bit different. It's physically a bit bigger, but essentially the same. It's held in place with the same clamp. You've still got the second inlet here on that slide piece of kit. Seasonal flow control here. For those of you not familiar with seasonal flow control, Oase have a feature on some of their larger pumps, some smart technology that means that the pump can monitor water temperature. And as the water drops below a set parameter, in this case I think it's 17 degrees, the pump will start to slow down. And once it cools down below 10 degrees, the pump will be running at about 30% its power rating. This is an energy saving feature because during the cooler months in winter, when the water temperatures are lower, your livestock, there's so many planes that go overhead, apologies for that. The livestock don't require such amount of flow going through the life support system, through the filtration system. They're not as active, they're not producing so much waste. And so in turn, there's less demands for such a flow going through the filter. So as an energy saving feature, this can be turned down and that will save a few pennies that way. So a standard pump would be drawing water in through the strainer and then expelled through the outlet here. The Aquamax Eco Premium pumps have got a secondary inlet, and that means that you can control how much water is drawn in through the main impeller aperture here and how much water can be drawn in through a second inlet. And that can be useful if you've got an irregular shaped pond and you're trying to draw in water from more than one place, if you've got an area that's stagnant, there's no water movement, or if you're not able to position your pump, the inlet, far away from the return from the outlet of the filter, which is efficient, it means that you've got further options to be able to draw in water from somewhere else. A really neat feature of this is that you can attach this to a surface skimmer. So that means that you can be drawing some water from the base of the pond and some water from the surface of the pond, which is a very efficient form of filtration. So one of the most important aspects, I think, of this sort of pump, and something that I think most potential purchasers are going to be looking at, is the running costs. The last generation of Aquamax Eco Premium was already one of the market leading pumps in terms of efficiency and economy. And this one, astonishingly, is even more energy efficient. They've been able to make savings of almost 25% based on last generation of last year's model of Aquamax Eco Premium. So this is a 21,000 litre per hour pump, which is a really, really powerful pump. And it only consumes 180 watts of energy, which I find frankly astonishing for a pump of this performance. It wasn't that long ago that pumps of these kind of flow rates would be demanding a kilowatt or more of power. So they've really been able to slim down and improve the efficiency. And that is down to what goes on inside the pump. So in here, the rotor design has been changed. They've been able to implement much more efficient tooling to be able to create pieces of hardware for the pump which are designed with much finer tolerances. So that means the shape of the rotor, the shape of the blades can be designed with much greater efficiency, and that has a huge knock-on effect into how it rotates through the water, how it draws water through the pump, and how much energy is required to circulate that rotor. So Oase have coined this as a Core 6 technology, space vector modulation. It's not really something that you're going to be using as a unique selling point for that, I think, but ultimately what it means is that this pump is a lot more efficient in terms of energy consumption and in terms of wear of the components. The general wear of the materials, of the moving parts, is going to be much less. And then to really bolster that, the components themselves are made with much more durable materials. The impeller is reinforced plastic and fiberglass. The bearings have been beefed up so that they're larger and they have more material. So all the wearable parts are going to last much longer. So let's take the pump out of the housing. We've got a little clamp here that we just prise off. And then we can lift and remove the pump entirely from its housing. So you'll see here, we've got another smart feature, a new addition to the pump. We've got a socket here which you can install an Oase smart cable. It was once called an EGC, Easy Garden Control. Essentially what this means is that you can connect this pump up to a control unit so that you can turn the pump on and off remotely, but you can also then increase or decrease the pump and have different power outputs and settings. There's a couple of ways of doing this. You can use an Oase controller, which is a piece of hardware that you can buy separately and connect the pump up directly to that controller. And from that, you've then got control of the pump via the controller. So this is something that's quite handy that you can position beside the pond, or if you've got a space close enough to the pond within 10 meters, you can position that controller close to the filtration unit. And that means that you've got control, independent control over that pump. Another way of implementing this technology is that you can use the new Oase FM Master Elan, which is what I've got on my pond. That already has a remote interface, so that via your tablet smart device you can turn off these devices on and off. You can also set timer functions. But if I then connect up this piece of hardware directly to that FM Master via this smart cable, it means that we can also then turn up and down the flow rates of the pump, which is very useful. Now, there's endless possibilities with this technology. You can daisy chain up to 10 different devices and control each one of those devices independently via that interface, via that app. So if you've got various different devices, pumps, drum filtration, lighting, it means that you've got independent smart control over each one of those devices at your fingertips. It's a really useful smart feature. Right, let's get this pump reassembled and back in the cage. It all fits together nicely. A nice little rubber grommet here for the cable to securely go through. Make sure that the clamp is fitted in the correct position. It'll only go one way. That's the correct way. There we go, that's clamped into place and that holds the pump on nicely. In this case, I'm going to have it set with the seasonal flow control off. I don't want the extra energy saving features. In this instance, I want to have maximum flow going through the system all year round. And we'll blank this off. Now, one other very useful and nice addition with this generation of pump, again going back to that Core 6 technology within the pump, the efficiency of that rotor, the way it spins with so much less friction, means that the pump itself is operating much more quietly. Now, when I was a kid, and I used to do a lot of snorkeling in the sea, it's been a long time since I've done that, but you know, it was very obvious when a boat went past, you could hear the noise of that propeller spinning underwater. And likewise, I've noticed when I'm doing underwater filming with my cameras that you can hear the pump. It's picked up by the microphone on that camera quite easily. So I've often thought, you know, what are the livestock making of that sound in the pond? Well, this technology means that the pump is operating much more quietly. So that's an additional bonus. Now, as standard with the Aquamax Eco Premium, it's a semi-solid handling pump, which means it's a very, very efficient filtration pump. It will take through particulate matter, soft material up to about 11mm in diameter. And that means that silt and fine debris that's going to collect in the pond, rather than block up a pump, is going to get drawn through the pump and then taken through into the filter, which is where we want it, in the filter rather than in the pond. But also it means there's a lot less maintenance on the pump. It's less likely to clog, which is again a nice feature. As standard with all Oase outdoor pumps, you get 10 meters of pre-wired cable. So that's long enough to get to most setups for outdoor sockets or switch boxes. And of course that can be extended if needs be. So put this to one side for the minute. We'll get back onto the matter of cleaning the pond out. The pond itself is now almost empty and we've got to start hooking some fish out. A lot of mucky water in the bottom and the fish are floundering around a little bit, but now is the time to start hooking the fish. It's much easier to get the pond drained down like this and then start hooking the fish out rather than trying to chase them around with the net when the pond is still full. So this is my new pond draining pump, and where previously we had a couple of different pumps, one of them that would handle bigger coarse debris, that was the fast pump, and then one which was a fish friendly pump. Look Dave, this one, you can just pull down. It's good, isn't it? Yep, it's going to block up a bit more, but it will save the small rud. Right. Cool, there's some lovely big fish in here. You all right? There goes a goldfish, right. Should have brought some scales with us and we could have seen how heavy some of these were. And they've got to be double figures. Right, again, you got it? That was a lovely mirror carp. Again, look at that, beautiful mirror carp. We'll try and get some shots of these when they go back in. Lovely scale definition on that one. So that's the majority of the fish out. There's at least one cunning little rudd that keeps evading the net. So I've switched over to vacuum time rather than the pump, just to get the last of the water out. And as always, my ever faithful and trusty Oase Pondovac 5 is fantastic for the job. Now, we've had so much rain over the last 5 or 6 months of winter that I don't want to leave the pond drained and empty for any length of time if I can help it. I can already see that there are places where water is starting to collect behind the lining, and what I don't want to do is to disrupt or upset how this liner is going to then relay when we refill the pond. I'm quite impressed we've been able to catch everything bar one rudd. That surprises me. So we'll get this out, we'll get that last remaining fish, and then I can start to manually scoop out some of this larger coarse debris, get the jet wash out and start rinsing the liner and the stonework in bits and pieces, and then get the pond filled back up again as quickly as possible. Seeing this pond empty like this, Dave, do you remember how much digging was involved? Right, that's this bit done. Let's get out from under this horrible thing. I have to say nets over ponds are my bane. I don't know what my hair's doing. Right, I want to focus on this bit for the time being. Deepest section of the pond, I can see there is water collecting under the liner. So I'll get the jet wash out, we'll get this cleaned up as quickly as we can so we can get some water back in just to the shelf level here, and that will just make sure that the pond liner is held down and fixed firmly, and then we can move over to the other side of the pond. It's warm, isn't it? It's a weirdly satisfying job using the jet wash. I love cleaning up the stone. Now it's worth noting I'm not using anything too powerful here. This is a nozzle designed for car washing, so it's paint friendly, and that means it's going to be soft on the pond liner and liner friendly as well. You know, if you went in with one of those mud blasters, those spiral attachments, you'll end up putting a hole through the pond liner, which would not be a good idea. And likewise, I'm not trying to get the liner or the stonework as clean as the day it was first put in. This natural kind of patina of algae growth on the stonework is quite desirable. It softens the stone, and where it's underwater, it's only going to green up again very quickly. So I'm just trying to get rid of the silt and the muck, really. Meanwhile, at the other end of the pond, Dave has discovered the transformer box. Well done. There was a couple of exploratory holes just to find it, but we found it. And this is where we can then feed the cable through the conduit and then join it up to the original connector, rather than having to put another cable join near the pond, which I didn't want to do. Well done, Dave. All right, Dave's looking happy with himself. And I can see a couple of high-vis strings in the box and in the pond, so that means you've had success.
I have.
Did it go through easily?
It did.
Wonderful. So that's the importance when you're building a pond, of making sure that all your cables are running through sleeves and conduits, so that for future proofing, if you want to add or remove, pardon? No tight bends, no, exactly. So this was a lovely gentle sweep, and that meant adding the new pump is going to be quite easy. The hardest bit was just locating that little junction box down there.
But we had pictures.
We did, we took pictures as well. Nearly finished the jet washing on the pond. Just got to hoover up all of this muck, and then we can start thinking about getting some water back in. Just to give you an idea of a comparison, the original pumps here in use were the Oase Aquamax Eco Classic range. So the Classic range is still a great pump. It's still designed as a dirty water filter pump. The particulate matter it can take through isn't quite as large as the premium, but it still takes through solids. It's still got a nice cage design, so it's pretty low maintenance and it doesn't clog very easily. To get into the pump, you've got 2 screws here on the clamshell, which you have to undo, and then you can open up the case. So I much prefer the design of the premium. And obviously this, as a basic pump, has only got the 1 inlet. It doesn't have 2 inlets. doesn't have the seasonal flow control, and the rotor design and the coil design within the pump means that it's not quite as economical, not quite as low wattage as a like-for-like comparison as the premium range. So Dave has very wisely put 2 strings through. Having unwired the cable join, he taped on 2 strings, pulled through the old flex, and now we've got 2 strings running through the conduit. So we've got 1 string as a backup in case the worst were to happen and the string were to pull away from the cable. So I'm going to pull on the string, Dave, which has got the cable attached, and then you'll know which string to pull, okay? Hang on 1 sec. Right. You got it? Okay, go for it. So you pull, and I'll sort of push and feed the cable through so there's as little resistance on the cable as possible. Coming through okay? Still coming through?
Yeah, you stopped it.
You know me so well. Okay, go on, hang on. You got the cable? Yeah. Wonderful, okay. So I have been thinking about that for many evenings to see, worrying about how easy it was going to be to feed that cable through. That was brilliant. So that's the pond drained and cleaned. I'm going to start putting some water back in there again now, and then we can start sorting out which fish are coming back into the pond and which fish are going to go into the big wildlife pond down at the bottom of the garden. Right, so we're at a stage now where we can put the pumps back into the pond. Thankfully, all the connections for the Aquamax range of pumps, whether it's the premium or the classic, are all the same. So I can literally just thread this original pipe straight onto the new pump. Nice and simple. And what's nice is having 2 different pumps that are easy to identify and distinguish which one's the filter pump and which one's the waterfall pump. Because previously, when I pulled them out, they were both the same, and I never knew exactly which one was which unless I started messing around with the switch box. Oase, I have every confidence in you, but I'm hoping and praying that it's not a duff pump. Because having gone to all that effort, if I switch it on and it doesn't work, I would be very cross. Although I'll blame Dave for his wiring. Hey? And here we go. That's the new pump flowing. So the pump itself, being new, is going to take 24 hours or so to really bed in and for the bearings to warm up to reach full flow. So I would expect a slight increase in flow from this as well, but already visually that's a lot more water than was coming out before. So these guys have had a little bit of a break in the pool and they'll be going back into their pond shortly. So like the pond, we'll just get this drained down to a more manageable depth, and then I'll get in there and we'll start hooking the fish out. Out of the pond like this, on this light background, this is a really good opportunity to examine the fish as well. Any damage or lesions can be treated with a topical spray or treatment, an iodine spray. But so far, everything's looking really good. Lovely mirrors. Should have worn my Mirror Carp t-shirt, shouldn't I? Come on, you. When you put these in the pond, Dave, just be careful. I'm checking that there's no rudd in there, but there could be. She is a gorgeous fish. I'm not a fisherman, but I'm going to hedge my bets at a good 15 pounds or so a weight, this one. Okay. Right, very quickly, if you can see this, this is a beautiful Mirror Carp. Look at these lovely enlarged scales here and that lovely scaleless side to the body. Beautiful fish. Right, Dave, this one in the net. There we go. Now there's 4 or 5 mature golden rudd, which have obviously been the breeding parents in this pond, but they are fantastic. Some of the biggest rudd that I have ever come across. Look at that. You'd never get an idea of that depth until you see them out of water. And a beautiful colour as well. Lovely fish. And there's one other fish in here that I'd like to try and grab and show you, and that's a lovely green tench. say this about a lot of fish, but the green tench is one of my favourite fish. I love the Latin name, Tinker Tinker. That's a great name. But the beautiful colours on the scales on the green tench, again, you don't really get to appreciate that in a pond. All you see is that very, very dark top. But these beautiful iridescent green and yellow scales are gorgeous. And a nickname for these fish is called doctor fish. I don't know if there's any truth behind it, but apparently they've got antibacterial qualities on their slime coat, which is good for other fish. That's all of them. Right, that's all the fish out. And the tank lives for another day. So these guys, these little offspring from those adult rudd, they're going to go down to the bottom pond. So this is the lovely nature pond that the rudd are going into. There's already a nice big shoal of rudd cruising around in here. As is always the case, the really big adults get picked off by the heron, but there's huge numbers of little ones, so this new group can join them. It's lovely to be able to have two ponds of this size in the garden, one for the koi and the fish, and one for the wildlife. Cheerio, rudd. There we go. Wonder what they'll make of their new friends. Right, that's it for today. It's nearly 5 o'clock. Long day. Got to come back tomorrow and do a service on this pond, finish up on that pond. So I'll sign off now and I'll get the camera out tomorrow. What a difference a day makes. Day 2, weather's miserable. It was quite nice yesterday. Nice to be out in the sunshine. So nothing really exciting today to video, just finishing off. I've got a bit of jet washing to do around the pond. I'm now starting to service the filtration system. This is the Oase Screenomatic 2 140,000, which is a great unit. UVC and Oase Bitron bolted on the side here. And as we should always do in spring, it's that time of the year when we do a UV tube replacement. So alongside cleaning the filter, I'm going to strip apart the UV, take the quartz sleeve out and give that a good clean, get rid of any debris that gets caught up in the UVC unit and replace those bulbs. Other than that, it's the usual treatments going in the pond, and then hopefully I'll be done for the day. I'd like to pop back in a couple of weeks' time and see how this new pump is performing and to see that the pond is looking a lot clearer than it once was. Hopefully, if the weather's good, I'll get the camera back and we'll do a final shot of that. But otherwise, that's it for now. I'm Ed from Crystal Clear Aquatics. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next pond. It'll probably be tomorrow. I'm doing a lot of pond lighting, which I wanted to do a video on. Thanks very much. Hungry lot. Woo! I couldn't end the video on a rainy day. It's about a week later. It's a nice sunny day. I was passing by and I wanted to just come and have a look and see how the pond was settling down. And I'm very pleased to see that clarity is definitely better than it was previously. And give it the next week or two, it should start to polish and improve even further. There's a much, much better flow going through the filtration system. The movement that I can see on the surface of the pond where the water is discharging back into the pond is so much more than it used to. So I think adding this new pump is going to make a huge difference. Right, well this really is the end. Thanks very much for watching. I'm Ed from Crystal Clear Aquatics, and I'll catch you in the next pond.